This is Come to Life, a 20 by 20 inch oil painting. And this one has an interesting origin story. I was contacted by a collector who wanted to commission a painting of her bridal bouquet. She got married a few years ago and was in love with it. And as soon as she sent the photos over, there were these bright pinks and there were anemones and all kinds of flowers, and they were just so beautiful. So I did her painting, and her painting was 20 inches by 20 inches, but I also let those images inspire a couple other paintings, and so this is the result. I used a light wash of purple just to kind of block out where I wanted some of the flowers and foliage to be. The commission itself had more white in it, and I am very partial to pink and purples. So this freestyled piece, I wanted to make sure incorporated some of those colors. Once I mapped out each of the shapes, then I went ahead and applied an underpainting. So that's what you're seeing right now. Um, I like to grab a large brush, that way it doesn't take as long. And then typically I'll stick anywhere between like a reddish orange, sometimes pink, sometimes even yellows. I find that doing the underpainting is really, really helpful when it comes to just taking away the white on the canvas. Sometimes leaving the white on the canvas can be daunting, and I'm tempted to fill in every single gap, and that's just not necessary. Also, I think it looks really nice when you let some of that underpainting creep through. Sometimes it can create an effect that looks like it's glowing almost. I definitely can't say that I've had many incidences where I've started a commission for someone and I've painted like two or three variations and been like, hey, pick the one you like the most. So this one was definitely rare, but I sent her an email and I was like, hey, so good news and maybe weird news, but I have progress photos. But I wasn't lying when I said I really loved your bouquet. So just let me which one is resonating with you more. And that was really helpful. She selected the one that had more of the whites and the light colors, which made total sense. I ended up getting to this particular piece, this type of composition, after looking at a lot of photos from her bridesmaid bouquets, and I noticed that they had less white in them. So this particular one, again, has more pinks and purples, and I just really wanted to emphasize just light airiness. That's just kind of what I was going for. There's just something about looking at her wedding photos that just put me at ease and just gave me all the feel good hormones. If you haven't already, please go to Instagram and follow at Shakia Harris Art. I'm also available on Facebook and TikTok, but on the Instagram, I typically will post stories and allow people to submit questions to me. So I'm going to go ahead and answer a few of those submitted by users. The first one is from Joan, and it said, what do you wish you had known 10 years ago? And honestly, it takes me a minute to even think about what happened 10 years ago. So it's 2022, so 10 years ago would have been 2012, and I was still in college. So I went to Western Kentucky University, and it took me forever to graduate because I initially went for news editorial journalism, and that was my passion for a bit. But after going to work in India, I realized that I wanted to do something that was more meaningful. And so I switched at the final stretch to special education against everyone in my life was like, are you sure teaching's not great? I mean, my advisor was like pleading with me not to do it, to just go gen ed, but I just knew special ed was for me. So anyways, 2012, I was about halfway through the special ed program, and hooey, I was going through it. It was not an easy, it just, it was really hard. And what ended up happening was I was in a situation where I was working several jobs. I was working at a nursing home as the activities person. I was working doing delivery for Domino's. I was working third shift at Walmart for a brief stint, just to kind of make ends meet. So what I would say to myself in terms of what do I wish I'd known 10 years ago? I wish I had known that no one's judging you for your timeline. And I felt a lot of angst in regards to, how long it took me to graduate and how many jobs I needed to have and all these things. Like, nobody's judging you, okay? It's just, life is complicated. And I also just wish that I had known in regards to mental health, because at that time I was really, really struggling, dealing with the loss of 2 friends, one of which was extremely close. And I just also wish I had known that even though I felt like I was going to suffer forever, that there's hope, that there's resources, and sometimes whatever I have set to try to relieve the pain or relieve the suffering or whatever, you have to kind of reconvene and look at other ways to solve those problems, whether it be therapy or medicine or whatever. So those are some things I wish I had known 10 years ago. Do the timeline that works for you, and when you're feeling in a rut and like nothing's working, switch it up. And if you're not sure what the answers are, find someone who specializes in whatever you're going through to help you out. Okay, another question that I have is, what is your biggest failure? What did you learn, and what did you learn from it? Ooh, biggest failure. Got a lot of those. Got a lot of those. It's like, oh my goodness, where do I start? So this one's tricky because I could knock out a couple different areas of life. It's hard because my life experiences, like where I'm at right now in my life, at about to be 32, is I look at so many things that have happened to me so differently. I feel like had this question been asked to me 5 years ago, I would be able to rattle off a ton of failures. But now I see them totally differently. So I'll try to approach this from a couple different angles. In regards to being a student, I'll say my biggest failure was I had to take English 300 like 3 times in college. And anyone that knows me knows that math and writing are my strongest suits. And it had nothing to do with the content and everything to do with being tardy. So that was my biggest pitfall in college, was just being tardy, because they had a system in place where if you were tardy X amount of times or absent X amount of times, it automatically reduced your grade. And so I was feeling like crap for a long time, but now I don't even look at that as a failure, because I know the reason why I was late and the reason why I was absent was because I was working 3 jobs and I was grieving and going through like a breakup, and it just was a lot. So I definitely am easier on myself now. This last school year that I taught, I just really, really struggled. I really struggled to get back into the groove of things. I had experienced so many changes in such short periods of times, and it was just like I couldn't quite catch my footing after my the birth of my second child. So when I was pregnant with Naomi, everyone was doing like all online. It was teaching special ed online, via Zoom, live. And everyone was doing it, so it was fine. But then halfway through the school year, our school changed to doing like hybrid. And so it was like some people could be online, some people can be in person. So not only was I teaching kids online that were at home, but I was also teaching kids that were online that were in the building. And that one was, the learning curve for that was crazy, because I had to, I knew how to teach online, but then I was responsible for managing people remotely, adults remotely, making sure that they had kids logged in on the right websites. And, I had kids that weren't proficient in logging into a computer yet, even sharing their screen or typing their username or password. So that just was really wild. And of course, once I got a hold of that, then I gave birth. I was off for a couple months. I go back to work and I'm totally in person, and not only am I totally in person, but then dealing with all the things that come with that. And then at the drop of a dime, if a kid had to quarantine or if a kid got COVID, the communication wasn't clear with us. And so I would find out at 10:30 in the morning, oh, you're supposed to be providing instruction live to this kid who's at home. And it just was a lot. It was a lot. So, I mean, I know now that I didn't fail, but I would be lying if I didn't say that the majority of the school year I felt like I was failing. I mean, my students all made gains, they all learned, the kids with behaviors, all improved, but it was a lot, and I wasn't operating at the caliber that I'm used to, and that was really, really unsettling. In the art world, I think I have a pretty distinct biggest failure. And it happened this past winter. So I would say the winter of 2021. And I did this market at this church. And I was feeling pretty optimistic. And I was nervous because I hadn't done like an indoor market like that before. And they had a ton of vendors, and I had this whole setup. I mean, it just was it was interesting to say the least. But I only sold like a print, if memory serves me well. I only sold like a print, and I mean, it just like it was really hard. It was really hard because I was having a lot of traffic and people coming up, and I had items there of different price points, but at the time, like, watching other people go and sell their earrings and wreaths and whatever, it just was like, it kind of hurt my heart. I'm like, gosh, is my stuff not good? What's going on? But I'm glad that I went, and I'm glad that I did it, because it definitely strengthened my stomach. And I had to do some like serious evaluating, like, okay, well, what was stopping people from buying? And the people who did buy, or the people who were like, oh, I'll come back, like, what were the things that caught their attention? And I had this moment like halfway through the event. So a lot of like helpful, constructive things came out of it. And like I said, I mean, I only sold like one thing. I only sold one thing, and it wasn't very much. And I was there all day, and it was so much work. But I definitely got a clear idea in terms of like my market and the items that I'm selling. And like, if I'm doing something like that, like, I really only need to bring things that are like $200 and less, maybe have one or two things that are large, but not uh, the whole kit and caboodle. So yeah, I got invited to do that one again, and I'm like, I don't know about it. But it's definitely difficult, like with the artwork that I make and my price point. Whenever there's a situation, like if someone reaches out to me, like I really have to look and see like, what are the people looking for? If they're looking for little knickknacks and stocking stuffers, it's probably not the best fit for me, unless I have a bunch of like smaller paintings, clipboards, journals, those kinds of things. So, what advice would I give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to mine? So, I will answer this in two parts. I'll answer it from a teacher and from an artist. The advice I would give someone who's looking to get into education, particularly special education, I would say to follow the research, don't take shortcuts, and be as structured as possible. When it comes to being an artpreneur, an art person, craft person who wants to be an entrepreneur, I would say that prepare yourself. It's a lot of work. I believe it was Fat Joe said, I would rather hustle 24/7 than slave 9 to 5. And there is some truth to that. And when you're trying to build or gain income from something that you're passionate about, it's easier. It's easier to get out of bed. It's, it's the first thing you think about when you wake up, and the last thing you think about when you go to bed. But in that lies so many opportunities to burn out, and you can fall into the trap of chasing the money to the point to where it's no longer bringing you joy. So just kind of be mindful of that. I would say to be consistent and to show up even when you don't think anybody's paying attention. I've learned with selling paintings that you have to play the long game. So, like, today is actually a perfect example of this, but I had someone buy 3 paintings for me today. And I woke up, I literally cussed. I'm not going to say what I said, but I did because I was just so surprised. But I was starting to feel kind of down because, you can't really count on views and likes and comments, those kinds of things. But I've been consistent about putting things on Facebook, Instagram, and sending out my email newsletter. I do it about twice a month as my goal. And the person who bought 3 paintings, they had actually bought another painting for me, but I think they bought that painting like over a year ago. But I got them to subscribe to my newsletter, and I can see that they check the emails, but they're not very active on my Facebook or Instagram or anything. But that just goes to show, like, if you're consistent and someone who consistently creates, you can kind of stay relevant in people's minds. Be consistent, keep showing up. Don't get distracted by likes and comments, because that stuff is just whatever. Well, I really appreciate you joining me and watching this video. This painting is entitled Come to Life. It is 20 inches by 20 inches. The depth of the painting is 0.75 inches, and it is varnished, which means it has a protective coating that protects it from dust and from fading. And it also has a attached dust cover. It has a certificate of authenticity, and it comes with the hanging hardware already attached. In the case that your budget doesn't allow for the painting, or it's already sold, you can snag these hardcover matte journals. I have clipboards, prints, framed art pieces. There's a ton of things. So just head to shakiaharrisart.com and use the coupon in the description. As always, it's been a pleasure, and I really hope that you'll check out my new online painting course, Painting Roses and Oils. It's available at my website, shakiaharrisart.com. Please like and subscribe this video, drop all the comments, and connect with me on all the social media platforms.